welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you for having me.
What does Tiddas mean?
Tiddas is, a generic Aboriginal term used widely throughout Australia, with variations in different areas. But it's a term really for your close female friends, although mothers can call their daughters Tid or Tidda and so forth. So it's actually the women you choose to have as family in your life.
Great.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Now, your book has been labelled Choc-Lit, and I wondered how you feel about that, because I personally bristle at this kind of twist pun on the chick-lit term. How do you feel about it?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's not something that I am concerned about really at all. And in terms of Tiddas, I think it's a departure from the previous 4 books, which were chick-lit or choc-lit. And obviously, the choc-lit term, I have to say, came from within the Aboriginal community.
Oh, okay.
Okay. No, that's okay, because people do. It doesn't mean everybody likes it, but I just say I've been called lots of different things, and that's one of the kind of things. So I'm okay with that, and it's fine. I would think Tiddas, though, is a departure from that in terms of it being less formulaic in terms of that genre.
So tell us about the women in this book.
Well, there's 5 women. They were all born on Wiradjuri country in central New South Wales in a fantastic town called Mudgee, and 3 of them are local Wiradjuri women. They're Koori girls, and they grew up together, went to primary school together, and it depended on which side of the train tracks you lived on in Mudgee where you went to school. They went to primary school, high school together, so they had all this socialisation as youths together. And over the course of their 20s, for various reasons, they all ended up living in suburbs around Brisbane. And now they're all approaching 40, and they're in a book club. So their social meeting each month is in a book club, and originally I wanted to call it like the Black Book Club, and then I thought I'd give it a name, and that's where the name of their book club is Vixens, and that's born out of the initials of all their first names. So we've got Veronica, Izzy or Isabel, Xanthi, Ellen and Nerida, and they're all at different stages in terms of their lives, as are most of the women that we have in our circles.
And their book group is like every other book group that I know of, which is that they are supposed to be meeting to talk about the book, but they never really talk about the book. They talk about their lives, don't they?
Well, that's what I've heard. I'm not in a book club, but I have lots of friends that are in book clubs, and even people, my publishers and editors and publicists go to book clubs. And even at one of the launches for this book, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, at our book club, all we read are wine labels," which I thought was hilarious. So it's true though. For me, the book club was a way in which to structure the novel. Monthly meetings, let's meet about and talk about a book as the springboard for greater conversations about life generally. So all the books I've chosen are books that I've read and loved and think that all Australians should read and have in their home and school and local libraries.
Like what?
Butterfly Song by Terry Janke, which I think is one of the closest things to the great Australian novel that you can read, in my humble opinion. Things like Pam Newton's The Old School, which is one of the few Australian non-Indigenous writers who have done so well to have an inclusive role in terms of Indigenous content in her novel, the crime novel. Chloe Hooper's The Tall Man gave me an opportunity to talk about. So yes, these women are meeting and they're talking about romance and love or lack of love, career and family, skirting around issues of substance abuse and depression and so forth. But it gave me an opportunity for these women to have conversations around black deaths in custody and so forth, and issues that I think Australian readers need to see.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because yes, you do skirt around those issues and touch on them very lightly, because what really struck me about the book is that in fact urban Aboriginal women today have exactly the same issues facing them as non-Indigenous women.
Absolutely, of course. And so what the book is really about, it's about this sameness. So yes, I'm all for celebrating diversity, and I think we embrace it. We exchange and we share and we celebrate it with each other. What makes us different, and what can I learn from you, and how can I be enriched by what you know, and so forth. But what makes us the same? Well, First of all, we're human beings. We experience all the human emotions that every other woman experiences: sympathy, empathy, guilt, heartache, infatuation, envy. We know how to be loyal, all those sort of things. The values, we share common values. It's not about being black or white, living in Lane Cove or La Perouse or, West End or Wiradjuri country. It's about being a woman. It's not about socioeconomics, geography, class, heritage. What do we have that's the same? And so that's what connects us as women, and what we celebrate friendship. Most of us, if we're fortunate enough, treasure the relationship with our mothers and our sisters. And when we're in our 40s, I believe we become really conscious of the core group of women in our lives. We have, I have lots of women in my world, but I have a core group of women like the Tiddas that I know I can ring at 3 a.m. if I'm distraught, and they would be upset if I didn't call them.
You say it's not about socioeconomics, but there's something very striking to me about these women. There is something very aspirational here in terms of what they're reaching for, in terms of their material success and their ambition. And there's certain brands that they want to buy. There are certain status symbol things that they would like to own, or they're doing the kind of trendiest, coolest yoga of the moment. So there is a very sort of deliberate sort of awareness of the kind of material world in this book, isn't there?
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, I think part of the process of my writing and all my books is to let readers know that 32% of our people live in urban centres. And we don't see that in the Australian literary landscape. Where are the women like me? Now, there is, in the novel, Xanthi, who is a cross-cultural training awareness consultant, travels around the country. She does Bikram yoga. She takes Nadine, who's gone from one extreme of trying to get off the booze to doing everything. I'm a method writer. I did all those things. Nearly killed me. If anyone does Bikram, stay home and read a book, it's better. But anyway, so I went with an Aboriginal woman who's an academic, who does that 2 or 3 times a week, and she teaches Indigenous literature. And so the point I'm trying to make with these characters is to say, we do these things too. We drive cars, we go to work, we have career aspirations, because we had a civil rights movement in this country so that we could have access to education, employment and housing, and live the same quality of life as other people. Now, my characters are very much like the women in my world. Like the women in my world, they run legal firms. They're CEOs of community organisations. They are high-ranking government policymakers, but they also sit on boards, do love jobs. They're role models in the community. And so there's other complexity of expectation and responsibility that they have as well. And I was just trying to say, people need to see us in a 21st century, through a 21st century lens, and to stop expecting us to remain static.
You say that this is about the things that we share, our commonality, but I'm just wondering whether there are particular ways that Aboriginal women support and reinforce each other and each other's tradition and heritage that you wanted to highlight in this book.
Well, I think you can see through some of the conversations about, whether they're talking about Aboriginal politics or the notions about talking about identity and the difference between saying Aboriginal and Indigenous, and having those conversations. To me, that's the way we support each other every day. But we're not consciously thinking, I'm going to support you doing this. It's just having the conversation and actually validating each other and each other's everyday experience, I guess.
Now, you say you're not in a book club, but you're obviously a big reader, and I'm just wondering, who did you read in the Choc-Lit genre as a kind of role model to sort of give you a template, if you like? Because when you start out in a genre, there are rules, and it is useful to have a kind of navigator or a guide.
Yes, and I probably should have known that before I started writing in the genre. I'd read Monica McInerney. That's it. One novel. I didn't know I was writing when my first novel came out in 2007 in commercial women's fiction. I just wanted to write a book to purge myself of 15 years of bad dates, to be honest with you. That's one thing, but the thing is, I was reading some of my favourite Australian authors, female authors, like Georgia Blaine, Rosie Scott, Linda Javen, Catherine Hayman, and so forth. And I'm reading these great novels of women who I know personally, who are in my world, but I didn't see women like me. I didn't see the women I went to university with. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said, write the book you want to read. I may be wrong. And I'm lying down the beach at Maroubra over summers reading this amazing literature. And I'm thinking, we need to appear in this landscape where we don't exist, and thinking, well, you have to write the book. And I wrote one and used a whole lot of material, not thinking that I'd ever write any more, and it was really successful very quickly. But what that told me was that Australian women readers wanted something more gutsy in their literature as well.